This is the Daily Brief, one landmark court decision explained in plain English every day. Presented by FindCourtCases.com, this is your daily briefing on the law that shapes American life.
Today, we are looking at one of the most fundamental conflicts in American life.
That tug of war, right, between institutional authority and personal freedom.
Exactly. We're diving into a landmark Supreme Court case that really decided where a student's right to speak ends.
And where a school's authority begins. We're talking about Tinker v. Des Moines from 1969. But let's be clear, this isn't some dusty legal case.
No, not at all.
This is the decision that says, once you walk onto a school campus, you are still a person under the Constitution.
That's our mission today. To understand how three teenagers wearing nothing more than a strip of black cloth completely redefine the rights of every single public school student in America.
Yeah, the stakes were huge. It was about whether young people could protest a major, incredibly divisive war, the Vietnam War, from inside a classroom.
And it still matters so much today. Anytime you see students organize a walkout or wear a political T-shirt.
It all goes back to Tinker. The essential question is, can a school shut down expression just because they're afraid something might happen?
Okay, let's get into the story. To do that, we have to go back to 1965, Des Moines, Iowa.
And the Vietnam War is just dominating everything. The whole country is debating it, and anti-war sentiment is really starting to build.
And in the middle of all this, our sources say a group of adults and high school students in Des Moines, they start planning a demonstration.
Their goal was to mourn the war dead and to show support for a truce. And part of that plan was this very simple, symbolic act.
Wearing black armbands.
That's it, a silent protest. The key figures here were John Tinker, who was 15, his 13-year-old sister, Mary Beth, and their friend Christopher Eckhardt, who was 16.
And their plan was just to be passive, no shouting, no disruption, just a silent, visible sign of their opinion.
Exactly. They weren't trying to stop classes or hand out leaflets. The plan was just to wear the armbands on December 16th and again on New Year's Eve to line up with the bigger community protest.
But the school district found out, and before the students could even wear them, the school board made a move.
A preemptive strike. On December 14th, they adopted a brand new policy. And this wasn't some general update to the dress code.
No, it was incredibly specific.
It was targeted directly at stopping this one protest. The rule said any student wearing an armband would be asked to take it off if they refused. Immediate suspension.
So the school drew a very clear line in the sand. And the students, they knew about this new rule.
They did. And they chose to go ahead anyway. You have to think about the conviction that takes for teenagers to just stare down that kind of institutional power.
It's incredible. So on December 16th, Mary Beth and Christopher wear their armbands.
And they were suspended, sent right home. John did the same thing the next day, and he was suspended too. They stayed home until after the protest period was over.
So the school's policy worked, in a way. It stopped the protest inside the school, but that wasn't the end of it.
Not even close. That was the start of the legal fight. They filed a complaint in federal court. They wanted damages and a court order to stop the school from enforcing the rule.
And the lower courts, they couldn't really agree on what to do.
No, they were split. The district court sided with the school, basically saying, look, discipline is important. And the Court of Appeals was tied, so the school's ban stayed in place.
And that's why the Supreme Court had to step in.
Right. They had to settle this question. Can a school ban symbolic speech if it's not actually causing any trouble?
Which brings us right to the core rule. What is the line? The school says they need to prevent chaos. The students say they have a right to speak. So what did the Supreme Court decide?
Well, they gave us a standard that is still the one we use today. And here's the core idea for you, the listener. Public school students keep their First Amendment rights at school, and the school can only regulate their speech if that speech would, quote, materially and substantially disrupt the work of the school.
Materially and substantially disrupt. That's the whole ballgame right there.
It is.
It means the school has to prove real harm, not just that they're, uncomfortable with the message.
And that's where the court gave us that really famous line. Students and teachers don't shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate.
It's such a powerful image. It basically tells schools they aren't little totalitarian states.
Exactly. Now, that doesn't mean absolute freedom, of course. The court was careful to say that rights have to be seen in light of the school's special characteristics.
A school isn't a public park. There have to be rules.
Of course. But the key is that schools can't just operate with total control. The burden of proof is on them. The school has to show actual evidence that the armbands were going to cause a substantial interference with discipline.
And in this case, the school just didn't have that evidence.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And if we look at the court's reasoning, it's just a masterclass in why we protect unpopular speech. The majority really honed in on this idea of undifferentiated fear.
Which sounds a lot like the school board just saying, we're scared of what might happen.
That is precisely it. And the court completely rejected that. They said, undifferentiated fear of a disturbance is not enough to shut down speech. The evidence was clear. The protest was silent, passive. It involved just a handful of kids.
Right. There were no fights, no arguments, no classes were stopped. Nothing actually happened.
It was all speculative fear. And the court made it clear the Constitution requires us to tolerate, and I'm quoting here, openness and hazardous freedom. Discomfort with an opinion is not a good enough reason to suppress it.
Now, this decision was a huge win for civil liberties, but it wasn't universally loved, was it? Justice Hugo Black's dissent was pretty fiery.
Oh, absolutely. And it's important to understand that side of the argument. Justice Black was furious. He argued that the court was basically turning students into the ultimate operational authorities in schools.
So he saw this as letting the kids run the asylum, so to speak.
In a way, yes. He feared it was the start of a new revolutionary era, where a student's desire to speak would just trample a principal's ability to maintain order. He thought the principal, not a judge, should decide when discipline is needed.
So genuine tension between order and liberty.
A classic American legal debate. But the majority saw another deeper problem with what the school did, and that was viewpoint discrimination.
Okay, break that down for us. Why was that so important?
Well, think about it. If the school had banned all symbols, no buttons, no emblems, no political t-shirts, nothing, that would be one thing. That would be a content-neutral rule.
But they didn't do that. They went after one specific thing.
The anti-war armbands. That's it. The court pointed out that other symbols, like campaign buttons, were allowed. By singling out only the students protesting the Vietnam War, the school was picking sides.
They weren't just maintaining a neutral environment. They were actively trying to censor one side of a huge public debate.
And that is a massive constitutional problem. The moment a government body, and a public school is a government body, starts targeting speech because of its specific message, that's viewpoint discrimination.
So they were basically saying, you can express support for the war, but if you express opposition, you get suspended.
Precisely. And that's something the First Amendment just does not permit.
So connecting this all back to the human impact, the Tinkers and Eckhardt, they won. They affirmed that students really are people under the Constitution.
They did. And that 1969 ruling is the foundation for almost every student's speech case we see today. When students organize a walkout, the question is always the Tinker question. Did it materially and substantially disrupt school?
Let's use a modern example. A student wears a t-shirt supporting a really unpopular political candidate. Tinker protects them, right? As long as the shirt isn't, obscene or something.
Absolutely. But, and this is really important for you, the listener, to understand, Tinker has limits. The protection is not absolute.
Wait, so where's the line drawn today?
The court clarified that in later cases, for instance, there was a case in 1986, Bethel School District v. Fraser. A student gave a speech at an assembly filled with lewd, sexually suggestive language.
Okay, so not exactly political speech.
Right. And the court said the school could punish that. They ruled that kind of plainly offensive, vulgar speech is fundamentally different from the silent political protest of the armbands.
So Tinker is strongest for political speech that's passive and not obscene. Once you get into vulgarity or direct threats, the school gets its authority back.
That's a perfect summary. Tinker protects the opinion, not a shouting match full of profanity in the middle of algebra class.
And the sources also mention another case from that era, Lopez v. Williams, that built on this.
Yes, in 1974. That case wasn't about speech, but about due process. It established that students have procedural rights, like they have to get noticed in a hearing before they can be suspended.
So the late 60s and early 70s really transformed students from just being subjects of the school to being citizens within the school.
It forced schools to recognize that they have to respect fundamental rights. You can't teach democracy in a place that practices authoritarianism.
What a powerful idea. So the rule is simple. A student's right to speak ends only when it actually materially disrupts the learning environment, not when someone just anticipates discomfort.
And the ultimate so what here is that the court decided that we, as a society, have to accept the risk that comes with freedom. We have to allow for unpopular ideas, even in our school hallways.
It rejected that idea that you can maintain control by just censoring things you don't like. But that leaves us with a question that's maybe more relevant now than ever, and it's for you, the listener. As our politics get more and more polarized, what is the modern threshold for materially and substantially disrupting an institution?
Where does protected political speech cross the line into something that's genuinely damaging the school's mission? That's the line we were debating in 1969, and it's the line we are still arguing about today.
You've been listening to The Daily Brief, one landmark court decision explained in plain English every day. Presented by FindCourtCases.com, this is your daily briefing on the law that shapes American life. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with the next case.